So I had been playing around town a little bit with David Crosby. And we played a gig somewhere, and I ran into an old friend of mine, Carmine Rojas, was out there in the audience, and he came back. And so here he is. Hey, Carmine, what's going on? He goes, we say hello. I give him my number. We exchange numbers. And sometime later, not too long later, he called me and said, you want to go on tour with Rod? I'm his band leader, and we need a guitar player. You'd be perfect for it. And I said, yeah, sure, of course. He says, okay, so, we're here. It's a year-long tour. You got to learn about 40 songs, which I already know about 18 of them. We all do. And it's Rod Stewart. Again, headphones in my father's house at the KLH, listening to Jeff Beck Truth and Faces and Rod Stewart's Gasoline Alley. And, I know Rod Stewart pretty well. So I said, Carmine, so, okay. He said, rehearsal starts on the 26th. We got 10 days, and then we're going to South America. Then we're going to do a 6 months U.S. tour, and then we're going to the Far East. And, okay. So, well, when do I audition? And he said, well, you don't. You're in the band. I'm the band leader. And we're going to get you and Steve Ferris from Mr. Mister, you two guys. Okay, and I knew Steve. We used to hang out a little bit in L.A. I guess Mr. Mister must have broke up at that point. Anyways, so I said, well, no audition. What if Rod doesn't like me? He said, well, he'll fire you. And I was like, okay. So it was kind of like, so try not to get fired. All right. Anyhow, I walked into the rehearsal room one day and we started playing. We rehearsed just the band for probably 8 days, ran a ton of tunes. And Rod came on the day before the last rehearsal, and I met him, and he was cool. And he just kind of walked up to me and said, yeah, I like the way you do the shuffle. We're going to do some of that. I go, okay, cool. Said, all right, I guess he likes me. And then he said, do you sing? And I said, yeah. And he said, can you sing the harmonies with me on? And he threw a couple songs out. And I, of course, said, oh, yeah, okay. Say yes. And the next day he came back to rehearsal, and he didn't sing again. There was no singing from Rod at rehearsals. So, okay, we do the first show. It's in Brazil, in a soccer stadium. There's 90,000 people there. And we're in this funky, gigantic soccer cement thing, shower stall, dressing room kind of thing. And I said, hey, do you want to go over, some guys have all the luck before we go up there? And, we're like putting our shirts on and stuff. And he looks at me and he goes, nah, we'll just do it on stage. He goes, just watch me. I said, okay. And that's kind of how playing with Rod was. He was, he approved. Almost all the conversation about the musicality of the show and whatever was like, yeah, well, you're good. You got this. So you know what to do. And I did know what to do. It's like, you're not going to play Maggie May without playing the exact intro, because you'd be a total asshole to think you could do that. Or any of the other songs that have the big signatures. But Rod was not terribly hung up on the rest of it. And you never knew what was going to happen on stage with Rod. It would be like, he might throw you a solo or might not. He might throw you a solo and then decide he should go change his clothes. And you'd be like looking at, be like, now what? And Carmine would look back and you go like, vamp. All right. Rod would start a song sometimes and then stop it. Every once in a while. He's that kind of performer. He didn't, he was like, I don't want to do this one. Stop. Hey guys, stop. with 20,000 people out there. Playing with Rod was always a party. And he was and is, he is one of the best singers in the world. He just knows how to sing. Again, I didn't realize that Rod sang like Sam Cooke until I played in his band and we started to play Sam Cooke songs. And that would be the thing, it'd be like you'd have a set list, but he might just go, hey, let's do Having a Party, or and you'd be playing Sam Cooke tunes, and then you'd hear him sing and go, oh my God, that's Sam Cooke, isn't it? I never put that together. I'm not that smart. But yeah, he was always, without him saying it, you got the message that what we do here this is a show. I don't really care if you're perfectly in tune. I don't give a shit which guitar you play, or, whether you think your sound is cool. And of course, is my sound cool? Like all of us, I would come to sound check and work on I got to get that thing on Stay With Me a little gringier, Rod never said anything to me like, hey, you got to get that sound on Stay With Me. Rod was more like, when we come up on stage, we're having a show. The audience came to see a show, we're going to give them one. You make some mistakes, I don't give a shit. You play a solo, go up to the front of the stage. As soon as I got in his band, he would be like that. He'd look at me like, oh. And then he would swing the mic stand when it was time. He'd let you know, because you'd feel a mic stand come right about here and be like, okay, I'm going back. But, and he built this thing, man. He built this thing. Everywhere we went, in the whole world, was sold out, packed. And as soon as we'd go on stage, people would go crazy. And, women would throw underwear. And, it was that kind of thing. It was like, this is rock and roll. And this is a different kind of rock and roll. I dig this rock and roll, And
those clips of the faces of them live, there's so much magic to everything happening.
Yeah.
The energy between them that they're, sharing, it's just like otherworldly. I love watching that stuff.
And, again, we're Americans, and we're talking about the Brits. Yeah, Ian McLagan was in Rod's band, for not all the time, but for some of the time that I was there. And, playing with Rod was like, I was there for about 6 years, except for a few spots. I guess I wasn't there because I didn't get the call, but they were doing that or whatever. And different people would come in and out. Ian came in at one point, who I had worked with some in L.A. Original Faces, Small Faces, Ichiku Park. I'm working with Ian McLagan, coolest guy in the world. We were just great buddies on the road, And, Kenny Jones, who then was with The Who and other stuff. I never really got to know Ronnie Lane, who was brilliant. Ronnie Wood came to one of our shows, and he was just a blast. We hung out, we loads of laughs in the dressing room. We played in Dublin, and I think he was living there, or close to it at the time. And, okay, here's a funny moment. Rod might not appreciate this, but, he'll probably never see this. I don't know. So Ronnie's going to come play a song with us. And we're all, at that point, on in-ears. We were traveling with a stage. The whole thing is like tons of trucks and staging. All our amps are not on stage. There's no amps on stage. It's a 2-tier stage, and Rod usually is up on the top in the middle. The band's on the next tier. Ronnie's guy comes and sets up a Marshall up next to me, and he's going to come play a song with us. Cool. The song is Sweet Little Rock and Roller. I usually do the intro on that one, and of course I'm like, not bad. You got it. So we're about to play Sweet Little Rock and Roller, and of course Woody's got the cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And no one smoke, and you definitely don't smoke around Rod. And Rod leans down and he says, he's just about to kind of, or, you know, we're about to start it, and Rod says, now don't play it too slow, Woody. And right away it's like, this is the kind of shit that breaks bands up. This is probably what it was. You know what I mean? Like, why there isn't no faces anymore. And Woody goes, and he just covers his head in smoke. It's the first thing he does. And then he turns around and goes, and that song is like, right? It's the singer. It was going like, speed it up. He starts it like half as fast as it's supposed to be, and with a cloud of smoke, and it was just like, it was so cool. It was like cool to see Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart have a little moment that, whether it was meant well jokingly or just pissed Rod off, probably, but it was pretty cool to be just stand there next to that, you know, like that. Okay. And Woody was so fat, man, as soon as he started to play, you just went, oh, that's it. That's how that works. That's Chuck Berry reimagined by, you know, a British guy who's a generation ahead of me, or something. You know, not everybody can do that. And the groove in the pocket was just instantly like, yes, my brother, that is how that's done, isn't it? Yeah, I thank you, you know. And here's a great story, too. One night, we were playing in Vancouver, Canada. And, you know, at that point with Rod, it's big-time rock and roll, man. We have a private jet. We're flying back to L.A. from Vancouver because we can go home after the show. And a little part of this is when I moved to LA, one of the people I met right after I joined Bob Welch's band, like I'm 2 weeks in, and I'm in, and I'm, you know, and I get a phone call from John Baldry. I don't know if you ever, Long John Baldry was a British blues guy. And when I was still working in a record store in Cleveland, he had a record, I can't remember the title of the album. It got big airplay in Cleveland. There was a track on it that was deep. And it was some of those guys like Mickey Waller on drums. And I don't remember who played in his band. I saw them play live. They came to town, and they were great. British blues guys. And Long John Baldry was a very tall guy, had a cane, kind of a deep voice. Anyhow, he calls me out of the blue. Says, I saw you play with Hall & Oates a few years ago at the New Victoria Theater. And I just looked you up from the Musicians Union, and I need a guitar player. I wonder if you might be interested. And I'm familiar with him, and I go down and meet him, and we you know, had lunch together. And I said, man, I'd really appreciate it, but I'm in with Bob Welch. I'm just doing this, and I couldn't back out of it if I wanted to at this point. And that was that. And I don't know, 20-some years later, we're playing in Vancouver, and after the show, John Baldry comes back in the dressing room to say hello. And we had a couple of words, and he's, you know, he and Rod are old friends. All the English guys, they all are friends. It's not like they don't know each other. They all know each other. And we're on the jet on the way home after the show, and Rod walks out of his private back room suite. He's got a VHS tape in his hand, and he sits down next to me at a table, and he says, man, I just watched this tape. It's Muddy Waters at Newport, 1964 or something. He goes, you know, when I was like 17, John Baldry gave me this album. He had the album. And he gave it to me, and he said I was to have it. It was mine for 2 weeks. I had to take care of it and not leave it in the sun or scratch it, and put it back in the jacket in the right way, and And then I had to give it back to him because it then went to Jeff. And I said, Beck? He goes, yeah. We grew up together. And I was like, wow. It was the only album in the country. John had it. And he was our mentor. And then it went to Ronnie. And I said, Wood? And he goes, no, Ronnie Lane. Then it went to Ronnie Wood. And so on. And then it went to, and he started, he said, this is how it used to be in England. There was only a couple of guys, and they brought it. John Baldry, Alexis Corner, John Mayall. They all were lit up by American blues music. Some of these artists were in the early 60s touring in England. And the Brits got it. And of course, then they brought it back to us with Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page and Peter Green and Jeff Beck and started talking about, it's B.B. King, it's Albert King, it's Freddie, it's Mississippi John Hurt, it's whoever it is, which is an interesting thing when you really look at that picture. But anyhow, that was to me just like, it blew me away, like, wow, what a story. He said, so the same album went to those guys. Yeah, I've heard of those guys. Jeff Beck, Ronnie Lane, Ronnie Wood, Rod Stewart, and John Baldry was the guy who made sure they all had that record for a little while. I would say this, Rod Stewart is an authentic motherfucking rock star. He doesn't put it on. It's not like, he just is that person. And he's a pretty good guy. He's actually a funny man. He's kind of a prankster. He's a good laugher, which is a very important thing in this world. I don't know. I've seen him around his kids. He's just a normal cat. He loves his kids. He's a huge soccer fan. I think he actually could have been a pro soccer player at some point and decided, no, obviously he had a better idea to stick with Jeff Beck Group or whatever band it was. I don't know, man. Rod's a cool guy. He does his own thing, and the way he does it, he's very original. And, he's a rock star.